it is possible within sentience, and we could play with that, to draw conclusions about what is beyond sentience, but they only are understood within sentience. Right? That's not naive realism. Naive realism says, no, it's only the way my experience and the way it is are just one and the same. It's like, no, I've got to do a lot of things precisely become I'm a realist. Well, what does that mean? I believe error is real. I believe that although I can't ever leap out of sentience, leap out of sense making, and a view from nowhere state what the truth is, I don't think that makes any sense whatsoever. It's nevertheless the case that I can be wrong, because how I'm talking about the world will show up within, propositional or performative contradictions, which is what we're wrestling with right now. Right? Within how things make sense to me or other people. I don't think there's a contradiction there. So that's what I mean. If you think that I don't think the question is, can things exist outside of sentience? Because that presupposes the possibility of a standpoint that you can take. The question is, can we learn about things that are not themselves dependent on our sentience? Yes, of course we can. Because if there were no such things, there'd be no error within our sense making. Do you admit that there's a non-identity between error and truth?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll use your metaphors, although I keep saying I'm uncomfortable with them. There's something out there and it impacts and I get an error, right? Now that doesn't mean I've got the absolute
Sorry, what do you mean there's something out there and it impacts and you get an error? What do you mean?
I make a prediction in my experiment and the prediction is disconfirmed. Even though everything has made sense, my hypothesis makes great sense, it all fits together, here's all the lit review, I've done all this, oh, crap. It's false. Error, doesn't work.
Okay.
Now, have I leapt out of intelligence and sense making and intelligibility? No, I'm still bound with that. That's how I recognize the error. But it tells me that what I'm in is not a substance. It's not self-sufficient. It's in relationship. It's inherently in relationship to something other than itself. We keep wanting knowledge to do an impossible thing. We keep wanting it to take us out of intelligibility while making sense to us. And as long as we pose questions like that, we are doomed to fail, because that's a performative contradiction.
Why do we keep wanting it?
Evan Thompson in the new book, The Blind Spot, in which he makes an argument convergent with this argument that I've been making. We recently recorded a conversation that'll be released on my channel.
John Vervaeke, search it on YouTube. The link is in the description. It's on screen right now. And just so you know, I'm just telling you what occurs to me. I'm not a believer in...
am I doing anything to indicate that that's not how I'm taking it?
I just want you to know.
No, I'm enjoying this. This is exactly it.
So, okay, you made a statement that we want knowledge.
Because we want to somehow get, to use Nagel's famous phrase, we want to get to the view from nowhere. And that is because, and Evan makes a very good, Evan and his co-authors, and I forget their names, forgive me for that. It's because we adopted a substantialist theism in which there was a super agent, a super person, a super observer, a super knower that was somehow outside of it all and could see it all from the smallest to the greatest from nowhere. And we bound our notion of knowledge and realness to that ideal. And even for people, this is a weird irony, right? Many physicists who, of course, would reject the theistic God, they're still running with that functionality. That's the measure. That's what we want. We want to somehow get the God's eye point of view on things, because only that will count as real. Everything else is merely subjective. And that is just a tortured, convoluted way of thinking. Not only is it epistemologically problematic for all the reasons we've talked about, what is it? How could you step outside of it and yet it makes sense within, right? And it's also theologically like where the heck is God? And how does he have this relation? And you have to invoke constant miracles, which is like, and I'm not besmirching religion, I respect religion, but like that can't be your sort of fundamental standpoint for having your ultimate model of how you decide what is ultimately real. That's just, it just strikes me as just absurd, actually.
You can't make sense of it.
I can't make sense of it because well, again, when you point out that there's a contradiction for God, right? Well, how does God know it if he's separate from it? Well, God knows it because he's omnipotent and he has the power to remain separate while still being in connection. And it's like, okay.
You don't think contradictions can exist?
I didn't say that. I mean, I think contradictions can exist if you mean, are there paradoxes that point to unavoidable trade-off relationships in reality? I think that's a genuine reference.
What I mean is, let's take the view from nowhere and let's see that fireplace in front of us, which you all can't see, but they're different colored bricks. The world has facts, and then those facts are colored with it's either true or false, just for the sake of this.
Okay.
In this case right now, there's only true or false because there's no brick there that's both brown and black. In this case. We look in the corner and we see one that's actually colored brown and black simultaneously. So that's a fact about the world that's contradictory. So what I'm saying is, do you think there can be facts about the world that are actually contradictory? Not it's contradictory because we're just limited beings and from our point of view, it's red and blue at the same time. But when you look closer from a different angle, they separate. Or, it's pointing to something else. It's giving us clues. No, I'm saying, do you believe there are facts in the world that are contradictory? And they don't explode, meaning that when you have one contradictory fact, it doesn't then make everything else rendered to be the case.
Yeah. So let me make sure we're agreeing. If I understand you, you're saying that there would be sort of islands of intelligibility that are incommensurable with each other.
Well, intelligibility is...
You can make sense of this fact and you can make sense of this fact, but you can't make sense of the two facts together.
Okay, so you're not saying these are two different people who have different...
No. We're talking about the things we're referring to, not the agents doing the referring. So it's like, this is what I hear you say. I'm saying there's a contradiction in fact, not a contradiction between my beliefs. There's a contradiction in fact. You kept saying the word facts. And so what that means there's a fact here, which means a fact is, well, what do we mean by a fact? Well, we mean an intelligible reality. That's what a fact is. Because a fact isn't like, a piece of wood, or it's an intelligible reality. So here's an intelligible reality. Here's another intelligible reality, but there's no intelligible relation between them.
No, I'm saying that this intelligible reality is both the case and not the case.
What do you mean both the case and not the case?
So it's both true and not true. So this is why I wouldn't use the word intelligible reality. I would just say fact. And I understand that you would have objections to the word fact. So that's why I'm saying, can you jump back to Vervaeke 20 years ago? Okay. And understand, and whatever naive Vervaeke, this is why is Vervaeke on the mountain. Okay. There's naive Vervaeke from 20 years ago. Okay. That guy, I'm sure you still have some connection to that guy. You could still somewhat model that guy. Go back, model that guy. That guy had an idea about facts and the world and the correspondence theory of truth. Okay. So let's just imagine something like that's correct. Okay, is that person, now that person looks at the whole canvas of potential facts. They're either colored in the classical sense. That's what I'm saying. This is such a thought experiment. In the classical sense, it's every fact is either true or false. Fine, we can put question marks on some facts that are ill-defined. Fine. Okay, I'm asking, this person sees a fact that is red and blue.
Okay, well, first of all, those aren't contradictions; those are contraries, right? It would have to be blue and not blue. That's a contradiction.
Yes,
so contraries are not contradictions.
Yeah.
There's no problem with things having contraries.
I color true and not true with the red and blue.
Yeah. So it would be the accurate description would be blue and not blue, and Yeah, I think that's impossible.
Okay.
And the reason I think it's impossible is because I don't think there are islands of intelligibility. And this is Spinoza's argument, because you could not bring them together such to see that they were incommensurable, because you'd have to bring them into some relationship by which you could understand them together. And then you're already undermining the very thing you're claiming. Like it would be, did that make sense?
Yeah. It's just, look, I'm not saying there exists contradictory facts, but there are logics like pair-consistent logic, I'm sure you know of.
Of course, and priest work is important, but priest doesn't talk about, like, he talks about but he doesn't say, he's not promiscuous. He doesn't say like everywhere. He says, well, where you get to, where you get into paradox, where you are in these trade-off relationships where you can't stabilize, right? So let's use one of his examples. Is the boundary a part of a thing or not? Well, if it's part of a thing, then you need a boundary that includes the boundary. Oh, well, then it's not part of a thing. But if it's not part of the thing, how does it bound the thing? He gives those kind of examples. They're like Nicholas of Cusa. An infinite circle is also a straight line, right? And what you get is, yeah, there seems to be elements of trade-off relationships. And maybe the trade-off relationship, maybe some of them have to do with Gödelian things. You can't get a formal description that is simultaneously consistent and complete. Or it could be that there is a continual trade-off, right, between bias and variance. There's all these fundamental trade-off relationships. I mean, that's what my work on relevance realization says. And if you're saying, do we get these tensions in our sense making that point to there are trade-off relationships probably in reality? I think that's true. Yes. But that's why I didn't have any problem with contraries. But when you were saying contradiction, that's where I was getting locked.
If you enjoyed this Toe clipping, then the full video is linked in the description. You should also sign up for Toe Mail, which is again in the description and the pinned comment. You'll receive immediate access to all exclusive updates from the Theories of Everything podcast. It also helps me communicate directly with the core Toe community. You'll also receive my top 10 Toes. Think of it as the intellectual version of Quentin Tarantino's Obsession.